Welcome to everybody. This is an event that has to do with those that are homeless or people that don't have uh, a place to stay for of people indigenous people during the permanent forum. Please, I beg you, I ask you to take a moment of silence, remembering all the indigenous peoples, in this case, especially from Paraguay, Colombia, and also from all indigenous peoples where we found each other in this moment. A moment of silence, remembering to all of them. Welcome again to all of you. We have already indicated for your channel, the channel that you want to use. In order to begin, I would like to, I want to say thank you to the team, work team that have prepared this event, the working group of or the NGOs and homelessness in the world, the Institute of Loreto Virgin Mary, Proclade International, Unanima International, and Vivat International. I thank you beforehand, and we also thank to our interpreter, Alex. We will have in this evening or night or morning, all depends where you are located today. We have four speakers, and then we have a time for comments or questions. So at this moment, our first speaker is Sister Angela Balbuena. She is a missionary of servant of the Holy Spirit. She has a bachelor in nursing and now has 23 years of experience in Mission Nueva Esperanza in Canindejo in Paraguay, accompanying the work of indigenous communities, Ava Guarani, and issues of land and healthcare. Sister Angela may present some statistics, the number of indigenous peoples all over the world, while in recent years have seen major global socio-political changes that have led to the establishment of new legal norms and constitutional frameworks, national and international, in favor of indigenous peoples. Still, many are immersed in situations of exclusion, exploitation, assimilation, and realities linked to the violation of the rights, particularly territorial rights. Sister Angela, you have the floor now. Thank you very much for this space where I could share my experience all these years working with indigenous peoples. Today we're going to talk about evictions, what is the understanding of healthcare, accompaniment, all the victims of the evictions, and some videos and pictures of the evictions on behalf of the government. Now we can share the PowerPoint now. Evictions against indigenous peoples, anguish and stress, indigenous illness. The concept of healthcare for the Guarani indigenous people has to do with tranquility, being well in the territory. Because of our imperfect living, our illnesses take hold all over all of us. Each town has its beliefs and peculiarities. The individual and collective harmony of everything and with everyone is the understanding of the Guarani belief. This includes social and spiritual relationships with others and with nature in general. When this harmony, Mother Earth, and the community is broken, you are sick. The impact in the psychosocial health care of families in general. Restlessness, disharmony, loneliness, deep sadness, stress, with special consideration for the elderly, children, We see right there an image, a picture of somebody who has been evicted. On the other side, they're using a sacred space as a desk, desecrating a special this sacred space. This another impact is the hopelessness, lack of confidence in the present and future of their peoples and communities. We see when they used to have their home, their plantation, and then the last picture, it's when they lost everything, their home and their all their food and their produce. Another impact is the increased mistrust of authority for authorities in general. We see right there the police, which is supposedly used to be national. In the other picture, we see the authorities arriving for the eviction, accompaniment, as we are trying to do as an indigenous ministry. Given the situation of territorial insecurity, the indigenous pastoral has sought to contain help in critical moments of evictions and support for the legal defense of displaced indigenous families. Logistical assistance with the provision of food for basic subsistence on critical days, support for the dissemination of their problems or issues with the production of audiovisuals and the viralization of their problems, make the problems visible. Support for the preparation of anthropological studies that serve as support for their territorial claims. Women and children are assisted so that they can have a space to feed themselves. The manifestation, we know that women have to face all these situations so much difficult, staying in on the streets and with nothing, with no resources. The manifestation of their beliefs is supported as a strengthening mechanism to seek to find that harmony in the critical times that they have to live every day. These are the list of the register of evictions only in 2021. They evicted 85 families from the Abara Guarami community of Cerrito Mingapora in the state of Alto Paraná. June 1st, they evicted 80 families from Abara Guarani community, Ivi Porá, Santa Rosa del Aguaray, in the district of San Pedro. June 9, they evicted 150 Aba Guarani families from the community of Acaraimi and Mandarias in the state of Alto Paraná. June 16, evicted members of the Aba Guarani community of Ka'apoti, district of Itacari, in the state of Alto Paraná. July 7, 100 families evicted from the Aba Guarani community of Cristo Rey, Iburaguaná, the district, and the state of Canindenyu. July 8, they evicted 60 families from the Aba Guarani from the community of Tecoja, Cabasu, Itaquari, in the state of Alto Paraná. July 11, 15 Pai Tabere families are evicted from the Ibibute community from Pedro Juan Caballero in the state of Amambay. November 18, 70 families from the Imbia Huapoi community, state of Caguatsu. November 28, for the second time, there's eviction of 85 families from the same community of Aguarani in the community of Cerrito, in the district of Mingapura, in the state of Alto Paraná. I want to show you now some images of the evictions. Here, forcibly, they're taking this grandma from the sacred temple where they were dancing. The police took her out forcibly. You could see the children too, some of the children. These are the other authorities that they're heavily armed with peppermint gas. This is even stronger. It looks like they were criminals. Now you see, that's what I want to show you these images so you see the the big quantity of policemen that they use in these evictions. Now we'll see we we see the authorities talking about the eviction. Some considerations. The Paraguayan government as a whole must respect and enforce the rights of indigenous peoples, mainly those related to the possession, restitution, and security of indigenous territories. It is not possible to continue undermining the health of indigenous families and putting the collective health of the most vulnerable, the elderly, and children at risk. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sister Angela. You have a very good understanding of the situation, especially how strong has been last year for you, how difficult. Now, I want to introduce to our second speaker, Maria Violet Medina Quisque. She is an indigenous leader from the NASA community, a Colombian human rights defender. Her territory of origin is in the southwest of Colombia. She is a mother as well as a technical assistant within the process of indigenous authorities and an organization made out of 15 different indigenous communities who have been demanding their rights within the framework of the permanent Minga, which means permanent working together space since last September 29, 2021. The camp is made out of over 2,000 indigenous people displaced from their territories due to the armed conflict. She is participating in the United Nations Permanent Forum of Indigenous Issues as a voice for the hundreds of women and children who are resisting despite their vulnerabilities of their human rights, all continuing to vindicate individually and collectively that identified the indigenous peoples and communities in urban contexts such as Bogota City. Right now, Maria Violet, you have the floor.
Muy buenas tardes para todos y
Good
para todas.
afternoon to everyone. Thank you for making us participate, for make visible all the issues of our communities in these very important spaces for us. I would like to share a video that it's no longer than 2 minutes that I will be projecting in a little bit. This is a material, some resources that we have been putting together. We're gonna present this for all the human right violations that we have been suffering tragically, especially women and children that I wanted to share with you. Please, for the dialogue, was sent. The police was sent immediately. This is the mayor of Bogota City who's speaking right now. While she was speaking, this was taking place. So this woman, it's talking about how the peppermint gas affected her child. Now the mayor uh, goes and denounce supposedly that they were some criminals infiltrated. The mayor never went to the campsite, ignoring all the children, all the different leaders. They encountered like this for more than 7 months. Contrary of what they were saying, the mayor, the not only Embera were in the park, but many different communities. So the mayor was accusing them of killing. They continue mistreating us. She's saying that they're criminals and it's unacceptable. This there were 30 people, uh, very bad. Three women that were pregnant with children of 7 months old. There was a man that was hurt. Many women and children were harmed. This is make you aware that in our country we have been living an armed conflict for more than 60 years, and for indigenous peoples more than 530 years. The armed conflict, even though there had been so many treaties, the territory it doesn't change, and this has caused the peoples in the communities that we have been displaced from our territories because they kill us in our territory. They evict us. All these armed groups, extractivism, the illegal mining, and all that it's happening in the territories. So indigenous peoples go to big uh, cities like Medellin, Cali, Ibagué, Bogota, and this is making that the communities have been forcefully displaced. We arrive to the big cities in order to save our lives as a way of protest to recover and claim our rights, self-determination to our territory. But when we arrive to these big cities, the local authorities is they receive this what is happening in this national park in the city of Bogota is what we live is an X-ray of what is going on. We arrived on September 29 last year. We have been there more than 7 months. Where you see in the video, there's only uh, tents, just little construction that we had done. It's a very difficult situation at this moment because the local authority is very aggressive, violent. We have been attacked by the squad, the police squad, on in April 6th and of 2022. We also have been attacked by them. We haven't received any food resources, nothing about our to take care of our health, nothing for the children, but um, almost the majority of the ones that are here are women and children. Some of them are widows because their husbands had been recruited or they have lived critical situations. But the way that they welcome us is what you see with peppermint, what you This is what you see on the screen, uh, without thinking uh, that there are really infants, and they've been affected because of this, and they've been affected in their health. It has been really, really difficult, strong. That's why we had come to this permanent forum. We're denouncing all these um, cases of issues of abuse from the government, but also that they don't want to recognize realize the situation that we have been living. Um, this is this is the encampment. Uh, 4 days ago, there was a huge rain, and so all the encampment uh, was full of water. It was flooded. Um, some of the houses were destroyed. So because of the amount of rain, the local administration didn't want it to listen. Not even even in the UN, we saw the mayor of Bogota City. They tried to they found one of our leaders, and they're gonna see each other. Supposedly last Friday, they agree to meet together. She came to a forum of global warming and also the role of women in the city that she's as a mayor. And but she hasn't responded, even though we have a Supreme Court judge that decreed that they have to provide for us a dignified place for us to live while we are relocated for some of our indigenous peoples where they don't kill us, but it hasn't been possible to have a dialogue with her. So at least she could listen to us. This is the kind of reality that we live. This last weekend, as I was here, they killed four indigenous leaders from the Cauca, the state of Cauca. It was the police that killed these four leaders were killed. The police opened fire to them without even listening to them. Why is it that they were going to the police station? We see, like here in Colombia, in our government, uh, our rights, life is not important, and it has never been in the first place. Right. This is really sad. Uh, what we have been doing in these last 7 months, we have been trying to raise the awareness about these issues, even though we have been living in this national park. Uh, we have been trying to raise the awareness through the social media, Facebook. Um, you can find us in Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can find us. We also have uh, open an international fundraiser to get uh, medicines, food, whatever we have in order to have this um, housing. In these last 7 months has been really painful. We have had 10 um, people died. Most of them have been infants. We had to attend to births in the park with no medical assistance. This is what we're living. Um, we want to let you know and make you aware. So we want to take care of our land, our territories, uh, to work against extractivism, mega mining, illegal mining. We have to take care of our collectiveness, our identity, our
Hemos hecho en todo, hemos hecho, tratado de hacer lo más que podamos, tanto así que tenemos 3 fallos de un juez, pero ni siquiera los 3 fallos del juez hacen que el gobierno de Colombia y la alcaldía mayor de Bogotá, uno, no se sienten a dialogar y dos, que no busquen salidas estructurales. Entonces, pues esa es nuestra lucha. Estamos participando en mi cabeza, en mi delegación, en el Congreso de la ONU, pero también un poco haciendo agendas porque creemos que el camino es la unidad, la colectividad, el unirnos sin importar el pensamiento, el color, la raza, el lenguaje, porque el
Sorry,
camino
now
para
in
mantenernos
translation.
tiene que ser que estemos unidos. Entonces, digamos que esto es un poco de mi intervención. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, María Violet. Es triste escuchar cómo, a pesar de tanto esfuerzo, la gente...
It is so sad to listen after so much pain, how indigenous people still being abused from their own territories for so many forces, local government forces, or illegal
También
armed groups. Also because of the mega mining and the efforts that you do. It reminds us the efforts of uh, the the peoples from so many different places in around the world. I am very grateful to you, Maria Violet. I hope that you could stay with us. So at the end of the session, if there's some any questions or comments, you could answer to them and listen to them. Now, I want to introduce Jorge Servin. He is he's an anthropologist. He's an expert in human rights and cooperation. Graduated in 2016 from the Carlos III University in Madrid, Spain. He also holds a master's degree in social anthropology from Mexico since 1997 to 2000. And he has a master's degree in Indigenous Peoples social communicator from the Catholic University Our Lady of the Assumption. And he was president of the Paraguayan Institute of the Indigenous, INDI, from 2013 to 2015. Jorge is also an expert consultant on indigenous peoples for agencies of the United Nations system since 2005 to 2012 in different organizations and departments of the United Nations, uh, WHO, UNICEF, UNDP, FAO, and the International Labor Organization. He has been also the national coordination of the second and third national population and housing census for indigenous peoples that took place from 2001 to 2004 and 2011 to 2013. Furthermore, he is an expert anthropologist with registration before the Supreme Court of Justice since 2001 to this time, to this moment. There are so many things, but if I said everything about him, it's gonna take all afternoon. So Jorge, you have the floor now. Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, especially to those that are making the effort to open this space to share, to all these situations, and also to so we had to socialize the hope and acts of justice, and not just acts, and also in Latin American, where we are talking at this moment. I want to share my screen right now. I have a brief presentation, especially so you can see it. I don't know if you could see the screen at this moment. I want to go back a little bit. Sorry. And the title of my presentation is about indigenous territories. I'm mixing a little bit some of the data, especially new data, especially how is it that with their own territories they've been abused uh, in their right, their community right, because there are different ways to use uh, those lands without the benefits for uh, the, the the peoples of these lands. That's what I want to share with all of you. I want to start with a framework.
En Paraguay, los pueblos indígenas, al igual que
In
en otros países,
Paraguay, uh, they have a long history of discrimination and violation of the human rights. There is a lack of public policies that help with the conditions, and it could help them for many years. There's uh, a big gaps of inequality of indigenous peoples and the population of Paraguay in general. These are the sociodemographic data in general. They reflect all these, and there are also different surveys that we have seen, we have done. They show this difference. These problems is about habitat, about the place where they live. These are the indicators of the basic needs. They reflect this situation in the indigenous peoples. All indigenous peoples in Paraguay, um, so they have at least one of their basic needs not suffice. For example, have a home, access to a better education, better quality of life. We have different percentages according to the different communities and peoples that we don't have here, but we want to share, just to share with you that the basic needs are not satisfied for them in a high percentage. This happened because there is an appropriation. Uh, it's open or is not open from the local governments. So the way this what is happening, this doesn't help. It is not very well seen in the communities. People that have a lot and people that don't have in order to uh, satisfy their basic needs. So institutionally talking, there are instruments in the constitution of Paraguay. There are laws, and we have adopted international agreements uh, like 169, but the public policies is very insufficient, especially all that has to do with access to the territories and the quality of life of these peoples. So now we're talking about a development for indigenous people, but when we see the plan, there is no budget, and so the majority of the things that they had to do from that plan, they're not budgeted. The application of the right to consult the indigenous peoples, it is practically ignored according to the international standards. Is very, very fragile in the way that they apply these agreements. So if we talk about the amount of land that the indigenous own, these are the data from the administration, the from the government. They're they're valid because this is uh, also is coming from the people. And totally, it's 1,163,000 hectares in almost 1 million. It's it's a collective property. They're not private. From these million hectares, on, only 963,000 have a title. So if we see the amount of land for each of the indigenous communities of Paraguay. For example, the Nivacle in El Chaco, they're the ones that had the most, or the Guarani, Ñavadé. And for example, those that almost had nothing, like the Guaraná, that it's in zero. Los Tomarajo also with uh, 3,000 hectares. They have very few land. This is like a really glimpse of what is happening. Here are the changes that are happening in the indigenous territories. This is an appropriation. They're taking over the land. In the last 50 years, there is a phenomena that you could see in the screen. We could share it afterwards. All these points that you see in Paraguay, the ones that are in green, is the presence for the last 40 years of Brazilian migration from peoples from Brazil to Paraguay. The ones that are in white are the rural communities, farm work communities, and then um, the ones at the end of the 80s, the 70s, and the 80s. This map, if you could see it afterwards in 10 years, you see a growth of immigration from other countries, especially from Brazil, that are taking over. These are not indigenous communities. This is people from Brazil. They're taking over, the one in green, and the growth of the Great Chaco Americano, and they're taking over the land of the communities of our indigenous peoples, especially the ones that are in white and horizontal. 10 years after, in the year 2000, we have a different image. You see the increment of the green and all the um, cattle. These are the cattle uh, lands where they have. In 2010, we see the definite growth of the green area. 2022, I don't have an image from 2020, but there is a strong presence in the lands and our territories of the indigenous peoples, especially on the east, especially coming from Brazil. So Paraguay has the biggest colony from Brazil, but Paraguay has a lot of people from Brazil. You could see also the points of the it's expanding the cattle land, the lands for cattle. So the traditional farm workers, you see the how small are the white area. Was, this is occupation, and also the environment has been destroyed. Not only the environment, but the social aspect. And if we put the indigenous communities here, you will see how much the impact has in the rural communities. Pay attention because you're going to see uh, the purple areas where the communities, the farm work communities, the indigenous communities are in talking about occupation. So you see that points in purple, those are the how scarce are the communities are, even though they have a title, they have been practically with a great invasion in their territory, great big occupation. There's a famous thing about renting or alliances for productivity, that it was a very strong push into the communities. So this is more or less what I want to show you, very clear the situation of the indigenous communities. What are the consequences? The global market has entered into the life of the communities. The indigenous people is a space just for business. It's an increment in the debt of the communities as a patron. This make a forced displacement. Sometimes is voluntarily they go to the big cities because they want to get the benefits of those economic agreements. It's not enough. Then this dependency, financial dependency, generate changes and some tendencies. The first thing, the community leadership uh, is the one that has the more money, is the one that take the benefits. And the rest of the people are out. The consequence, the direct consequence, is that there are different levels of society. So, uh, really breaking the traditions that they have in order to uh, organize their communities. There is also communities as productive sectors, like they have cattle, um, plantation of soy, soy plantations, uh, wheat, and also corn. There is a the local economy is broken because of the new way of seeing the land. As Sister Angela said before, this uh, causes a lot of vulnerability. There are like double titles that said that there are two owners of the same land, and there are a lot of problems with the law. So that's why then there's the evictions, the forced evictions, because their land was not completely under their ownership. These are some images and how the big business, the cattle chip, these are the poison that they uh, give to the big plantations. This is very intense. Well, this is it causing a lot of problems in their healthcare and so many side effects of all this. Some last consideration, the Paraguayan government. We ask the government to respect the rights of the indigenous people, It is especially the right to the ownership, restitution, and security of the indigenous territories. There should be a consultation. There should be a plan that it's implemented. This is not an easy situation, but it really requires big attention because the way that they use the land, and also this is going to generate more poverty, more exclusion. They're going to make the indigenous peoples more vulnerable. So uh, also budget all the different institutions. So they have to think now in the government, Paraguayan government, to have um, an organization, a space for the indigenous, not only in the government, but also in the municipalities. There's, there's an institute that is very important, and it requires a revision, uh, a reform in order to generate a bigger defense of the communities, the indigenous communities. This is all that I wanted to share. And also, I will be waiting for your comments and questions. Thank you very much.
Don Jorge, le agradezco infinitamente
Thank you very much,
repaso de
Jorge.
todo lo que ha dicho
I
y lo
cannot
que
see again all that you have
valoramos.
shared because there's a lot of information.
Usted obviamente
You
conoce muy
obviously
bien
knows very well
su experiencia,
your experience
estudios
and
anteriores
all your
que
studies
conozco
that
la
have
situación
helped
nacional
us
muy bien.
to understand this situation, this national
Puedo decir
situation.
que por las
I
veces
only
que he
could say
estado en el Paraguay,
for the all the times that I have been there in Paraguay,
distintas partes,
and I have
lo que
seen so
usted
many
dice
different
es
parts. What you said,
exactamente lo que he
that's
visto.
what exactly I have seen.
Ahora,
Now,
presento a,
I want to
no
introduce,
sé cómo decir, profesor
I don't know how to say,
Humberto
Professor Dr. Humberto Villasmil Prieto,
originalmente
originally
de
from Venezuela,
Maracaibo, si
from
no me
Maracaibo,
equivoco.
if I'm not mistaken.
Don Humberto ha tenido una
Humberto
larga
has an
trayectoria
extensive
en
trajectory
estudios en
in
distintos
different
contextos
studies in different fields
países.
in very many
Yo
different
quisiera
countries.
mencionarles
I cannot say everything about him.
por escrito a los que
We could give you in writing to those who are participating today, because otherwise it's going to take the entire time that we want to give. Now he's is an expertise in international labor for the office of the International Labor Organization for the countries of the Southern Hemisphere in Latin America. They're located in Santiago de Chile from 2006 and 2016. He is a specialized member of the honorary chair for the Department of Social Law and the Law Faculty in Caracas, and guest professor several universities in Ginebra, in Switzerland, between 2001 and 2006 as senior specialist in labor legislation, labor relations, and social dialogue at the International Labor Organization for Central America, Panama, Dominican Republic, and Haiti, based in San Jose, Costa Rica.
También Don
He is a
profesor
member of the honorary chair for the department. He is a professor. He is teaching also in Venezuela and many other places, especially, if I'm not mistaken, in Mexico,
central.
and Central America. So, Humberto, I don't want to waste more time, but all that is very interesting. But we would rather want to listen to you. You have the floor. Thank you very much, Daniel. I am very grateful for your presentation, for all the presentations, and also to take me into account. And right now, I'm here in Asunción. Every cycle ends. This is my last mission as a inactive member of the ILO after a long career. I'm I'm really ready to be retired. I I really funded myself from here from Paraguay. From I'm talking to you. I have I'm gonna respect the time that I have been assigned. Just allow me to say thank you to all the team that has been possible this activity, and my really greeting to Sister Angela, my my friend Jorge. I prepared a small presentation. The time is running, so I could you could see what I want to share with you. I just want to say why these few slides that I wanted to share. The concept. This is very conceptual presentation. There are two paragraphs. One says that the Declaration of the Human Rights recognize that uh, indigenous peoples, they have the same rights as an individuals and collectively. So look at that. The 169 of the ILO for the indigenous peoples, and precisely when I was listening to Sister Angela in first place, talking about evictions, uh, relocation, and obviously Jorge very directly all that he has been saying. There were norms also that were attached to all these rights, uh, but without uh, taking in account that it's very fragile because the elements of control of the ILO. That's why it's necessary to talk about international laws. Uh, they're going to be very significant because these are the obligations of all the countries, all the states that are part of this agreement. There are mechanisms of control and implementation, but there is not enough budget for all this. This historically, the ILO, they talk very early. How is it even the terms? If there were aborigine workers, so coming from the European countries, it's still working in many countries in Latin America. For example, Agreement 107 in 1957 was the first treatise, international treatise about the human rights of indigenous people. The discrimination and exploitation of indigenous peoples has inspired to adopt a big agreement uh, for forced labor as early as 1930.
that agreement 107. More than 27 countries ratified this agreement, like, for example, employment, relocation, the language, and education, among many other rights. But in the 80s, they said that it was necessary a new review. So this started the agreement 169 in 1989. The previous agreement cannot be taken like that. It it was conceptually was very rich, very powerful, because explain the journey that they have gone through, that the evolution of so it was necessary to adopt new international laws towards this matter. Uh, so they eliminate towards the assimilation that they had before. The idea of 107 agreement, it, it was that the indigenous community had to be integrated into the civil society. 169, it gives uh, basic rights to those groups that they didn't have before. Uh, from the That's why it was necessary to have a new agreement. It was review that 107. It has 24 ratifications, 15 in Latin America and the Caribbean. The cases from Colombia, Paraguay, these countries, Colombia and Paraguay, had ratified this agreement. Germany was the last country to ratify the agreement, but they review 107 and also those that ratified 169. It was just renouncing to the previous one. However, the 107 that cannot be ratified again still is present in 17 countries. Five of them are in Latin America, like Cuba, El Salvador, Haiti, Dominican Republic, and Panama, but also Bangladesh, Belgium, Egypt, Guinea-Bissau, Pakistan. It is very interesting, but it's real. There are 36 very powerful norms that include, and they justify an approximation, interdisciplinary approximation to understand, to comprehend what is this agreement made of. It is very complex. What 169? It is the only international treaty open that had ratified all the countries. That it's dedicated to promote, guarantee, and protect the rights of the peoples, indigenous peoples. So this it's force the states internationally, and also the ILO. Uh, the state has to accept a mechanism of control for labor that has to be according to the agreement. There is a regular control that is an obligation of the states that have ratified the agreement, but also the collectives, the peoples, they could use this agreement, but it's not used well enough by the indigenous peoples. If there is any questions, we can get deeper into this problem. is the problem of planification, because this comes from the control institutions like the ILO. They wanted to have a development that has been sustainable. The consultation, it's very important to consult all the communities, the indigenous communities, and all the decisions and all the decision making. So, for example, paragraphs 6 and 7, there are very key dispositions, because these paragraphs 6 and 7, this is the application of the RES implications and implementations of these rights. This is very, very important, which is consultation and participation. It's an agreement that talks about social dialogue. This paradigm, like the only organism from the United Nations that could take. We have talked about consulting. We are going to talk briefly, but what kind of consultation is that this agreement is? Any kind of survey? It's what kind of survey is? The organisms of control have said there are 5 things that are important. They have to be formal, full, and they have to be done in goodwill. They have to implement appropriate mechanisms of national wise. The third is the survey has to be done through the institutions of the indigenous peoples. When they are not represented, it doesn't work according to the legislature and all the administrative measures that they have. And also they have to be in agreement with the indigenous people. And the 5th one, then after that, this survey, if they don't follow through all these requisites, is not going to be valid, because it doesn't implement the rights of the people, and the results are not going to be taken into account. So they have to be in goodwill. And at any time of this process, they had to check that the dialogue was present at all times. The Declaration of Human Rights for Indigenous Peoples in 107, it was very, very significant, refer to the right to survey or consultation. Here is the reference. But in the time that we have left, these requirements and processes to survey and participation, the ILO, they have to be attached to representatives that are from the indigenous peoples. Goodwill, appropriate procedures, and to be able to achieve an agreement. In the different interventions that I have been present, they talk about land, culture, about community. In the first moment that I have heard today, the preservation of culture, land, and food, they are included in the agreement 169. We cannot forget that. And now I want to present to you, there are 2 dispositions that talk about what I just have said. Article number 5, uh, they had to recognize and protect the values of the social practices, cultural practices, religious practices, and spiritual practices. And it has to be an integral process, recognizing the values, practices, and institutions of the indigenous peoples. And then article number 13, they force the government to respect the culture and the spiritual values of indigenous peoples, and it has a big influence of the relationship that they had with the land and the territories. In the first two cases, it was mentioned very important circumstance, the relocation. People that were displaced by force. That's what it explains this article that I'm going to present to you, article number 16. This is very clear, including what I have said in the previous articles. Peoples cannot be relocated from their land. The number 2 of article 16 assume that the only reason that agreement, it has be consent from the indigenous communities that had been that are going to be relocated. When exceptionally the relocation of those communities are necessary, only can be effective with their consent freely, and they have known the causes of this relocation. So this guide that I have shown you through the agreement 169, I just want to go really slow about the technical note that all that involves all this situation to try to understand. There are international norms. It's attached to the Declaration of Human Rights, but for example, in the OLO, so this agreement forces all the states that are in this agreement to follow this agreement and to fulfill all the norms and the obligations of the governments. They have to take care of the indigenous peoples. For example, in the intervention of Maria Violet Quisque, they are denouncing this in the international level. This could go to the international court because they're using their human rights as indigenous people. But the Organization of International Labor, so all those that are assisting all the different ways and channels to control. I could talk a little bit more about all this mechanism, but because of time, I cannot do that. I already finished my time. Humberto, thank you so much. I had the opportunity previously to study all these aspects when I used to study law to understand now uh, better than when I used to be a student. I really, really am so grateful to you. Um, I want to give thanks to Jorge, Sister Angela, and Maria Violet. And to you four, I I am I'm a, I'm guilty for you to speak, to talk today. All that you have shared, all that you have prepared, all that you have talked to us, even though time is very short. I know that you have much, much more to participate, to share with us. We have just few minutes, but if there's any question, there's one question that I see in the chat. It's in English.
Stories worldwide of indigenous peoples retaining their land against invading mega corporations.
I don't know if there's any comment or from Jorge or Humberto.
Tal
I
vez
think this is a big question. Maybe if we could um, just contextualize this specific uh, context. I just don't know any successful story of reivindication of the indigenous people that had claimed their territories, their lands. After many, many years uh, to work just to make them respect this right to the land. But there's so many decades that have passed, not necessarily from any corporation, but obviously in front of the government that hasn't guaranteed, hasn't fulfilled and respect the agreement. For example, the sentence of the Inter-American Court, the case Saboya Maxa from Paraguay in their area of Chaco. There are three cases very well known,
entonces
and they're
en esos
in
casos se puede
process
hablar
of fulfilling the ruling of the Inter-American Court. That could be taken as a successful story, a positive experience, but just in that area. That's as it's said and guaranteed all the rights that the government has tried to ratify. Thank you very much, Jorge. Humberto has another question, another answer. I'm gonna keep going. Time it's over for all of us. So before I say goodbyes, I want to just give, if if you want, a minute for a last comment from each of the speakers. Sister Angela, give us a word as a conclusion of your presentation.
Lo que yo quiero decir en conclusión a
What I want to say in order to conclude is to all these questions that indigenous peoples continue fighting and struggling. They don't lose the strength to continue fighting for their land, for their territory. What I admire the most is their faith, because we have had so many blessings and that faith that give us strength in order to continue fighting and strength in the most difficult moments. Thank you so much, Sister Angela.
María Violet, ¿algo quiere?
Maria Violet, do you want to conclude anything? Do you want to say anything?
No, sí, en primer momento agradecer por la invitación.
First time, I want to say thank you. Uh, right now, I want to manifest that to take care of the territories and take care of all our resources. it is something
ejercicio de
that we
pensar
all
sobre
had
la
to do.
misma
And we had
y,
to think about in our own life and
desde
future
la perspectiva
generations,
no
and
solo el
we have
modelo
to rebuild ourselves,
a los pueblos y a las comunidades indígenas, sino que
not
adicionalmente
only
es
uh,
pensarnos
thinking about the
en
indigenous
considerar
peoples,
cuando la
but also
naturaleza en su
uh,
momento de
thinking
adaptación
what
haga
is going to happen
las diferentes
when
reacciones
nature
necesarias. Por eso es
manifests
importante seguir
uh,
pensando y
herself.
llamando a la unidad que
Uh,
puedan transformar tejidos de los
so it
distintos
is
vínculos de
important
los que
that
tenemos.
we have
Muchas
to
gracias.
call humanity to um, rebuild and help nature to restore our harmony. Thank you, Maria Violeta. Humberto now has the floor. And after that, I will give the floor to Jorge. Thank you so much, Daniel. Just 1 minute. My last comment is I, w- uh, I want to touch with the previous last question. This sentencing from the Inter-American Court, it, there was a lot of constancy, organization, and that communities had the chance to understand that there is uh, organizations, institutions that they can go and claim their rights. But I would like to say this afternoon. Um, 169 is an international treaty. Ratified the agreement, it has to be implemented, and it's an obligation of the states, of the governments. And this offer to those participants, they have the possibility to implement the mechanisms of control that are outside the countries and the governments. I cannot explain those control measurements and those entities that could make sure that the agreements are being implemented. It's in the hands of the communities, the civil society. That's my last comment. Thank you very much, Humberto. And now, Jorge, you have the floor in order to conclude. Thank you, Daniel. Yes, I want to indicate that in Paraguay and many other places, indigenous communities, indigenous peoples, they not only deserve, but they have to request, demand, and we have to accompany acts of justice, not acts of to be benefit, because sometimes it's really undercover. It's a kind of a discrimination. They want to execute. Oh, poor people. They don't have education. They don't have land. It, that invasion, that occupation, that is so indirect, is so subtle. They deserve. We have to act with justice, because in this way we could improve, help to improve um, the situation of our communities and alleviate our communities. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jorge. As I have mentioned, I think in the beginning, I am originally from Canada, and today we see in the news, we see how the practice, in the practice in the 1800 and the beginning of the 1900s, they took clearly uh, end up on the agreement 107, and then they have to change, they have to be reformed. Right now, even Pope Francis have asked uh, forgiveness uh, to the people, the indigenous peoples in Canada. And I think the struggle, the fight from coming from the indigenous communities, because it's their fight, and there are so many others that are ready to fight with them uh, to dignify their lives that they deserve. We are living in their lands, in their ancestral lands. Nowadays, we have the responsibility to accompany, support the fight of the rights as indigenous peoples, as any human that they are. I am very grateful to all our speakers, all you participants listening, and any question or comment that you would like to do. If you see in the flyer that the invitation, you could see the name of the different organizations, the main organization. If you look in Google, you could Google it, and there's our web pages, and then you could also communicate with us. We will be very happy to talk to you a little bit more about all this. For right now, I conclude saying thank you infinitely. God willing, we will see each other again, wherever we will find each other again. Thank you, and to the next time.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.